Hello and welcome to another episode of Ask Aaron. In this one, we're going to discuss why you're struggling to attribute your e-commerce sales correctly. Let's get into it. Now look, I know that a lot of e-commerce brands right now are really struggling to get the correct attribution when it comes to the different marketing channels that their brand is using. So if that's you, I'm going to try and help you understand what's going on and what the solution is to this problem that so many brands are having. So in a nutshell, because I like to keep these videos as non-technical as I possibly can. In a nutshell, the problem we've got is a lot of e-commerce brands they've got their organic, they've got their repeat customers, they're running ads on Meta, they're running ads on Google, maybe on Bing as well, and various other platforms. And all of those ad platforms are essentially wanting to take the credit for that sale. Add to that, there's been lots of changes when it comes to conversion. So in years gone by, many brands had many different type of setups. Some would opt for a last click attribution, which gave all of the credit for that sale to the most recent ad or source of traffic where that user came from. Now, Google has evolved massively and has removed some of the conversion attributions of late. Bing is doing much the same. Meta has made a host of changes as well. So it's making the attribution in terms of which ads and which placements and which places on the internet effectively are getting the credit for that sale. When we add into all of this, these changes when it comes to conversions and this, that, and the other, when we add on top of that a lot of brands, for the average customer these days, well, they're bombarded with ads and different messages, but they also have multiple touch points. When was the last time you or I bought a product without having seen the brand? Maybe we did some searching online, then we got retargeted, maybe then we saw them on social, and then they popped up here and we saw that, then we went back and then we thought about it. Those multiple touch points is meaning that a user, a potential customer, might see and interact with our brand or e-commerce brand multiple times before they ultimately then buy the product. Now, when we add on to that the different consideration times for a product, depending on what it is you sell, some brands, it's an impulse buy. Others, there can be weeks worth of consideration and discussing it and talking it with their partner and this, that, and the other. So when we add in all of that, on top of that, we then look at these different platforms. By default, they have different conversion windows. So different, some of them are 3 days, 7 days, 14 days, 28 days. Some of them, you can change some of these, and a lot of brands don't know the default of how they're set up. And so because of this, if one channel is attributing that conversion, that goal, over a 7-day window, and others are doing it over a 28-day window, well, that is going to massively change the credit of where that conversion is coming from. And it adds into, it creates a problem. Then on top of that, you add all the privacy stuff that's been going on over the last few years, and these tools such as analytics and its inability to, in recent years, to be able to effectively follow that user around the internet and sort of capture them. It doesn't know. It's why most e-commerce brands are seeing a big increase right now in direct traffic, because direct is essentially analytics' way of going, I don't know where that traffic came from, there I'm just going to default it to direct. This is happening, I'm sure you're going to be able to relate to some of this. So, this is the problem. It's not one problem, it's a whole host of problems. And the way it's manifesting itself for the end user, for the e-commerce brand, is they're saying, well, how do we attribute those sales? And from that, how do we therefore know where to send our budget, how to allocate budget and resource and so on? What's the solution? That's the problem. What is the solution? Well, the big thing is things are going to get easier, thankfully, with the rollout of GA4. As everyone moves to GA4, and as brands really get up to speed and start understanding how to utilize that now, I have to say, as an agency, we're loving GA4. It's really useful. As more brands embrace that and figure out how they're going to get the most from it, as long as it's set up correctly, GA4, it overcomes some of the limitations that we saw in GA3. Again, without getting too technical, it does help to overcome some of those issues. More and more platforms such as Google Ads are moving now towards a default of data-driven attribution, which is essentially the algorithm taking the responsibility, taking the onus, saying, look, I will work out as best as I can how to attribute that conversion back to the different touch points, because essentially the algorithm understands that a user has multiple interactions with a brand. So that's also happening. Now, Other things that you can do. So you can check that your conversions are set up consistently. So the different platforms that you're using, just go and make sure, or ask your dev team or ask the agency supporting you, are the conversion windows, the way these are set up in terms of how we're going to attribute a conversion, are they consistent across different platforms? Because just doing that will ensure that the data is more accurate. And we've been able to more closely align the different platforms by just ensuring, okay, we're consistently using a 7-day window, or we're consistently using a 28-day window. And remember to align that to what makes sense commercially as a business. Because if your average customer takes, has a 3-4 week consideration phase, or that's what the buying cycle looks like, then don't create a 7-day window, because the conversion is going to be miles off. So it's going to be different for every single brand, but just being consistent across Google, GA, across Google ads, across meta ads, etc. It ensures you're as accurate as you possibly can. Also, make sure that a common mistake we see brands doing is double tracking or tracking the wrong things. So just make sure that things are, take your time or pay someone to get the tech side of the tracking set up. Because if you're feeding the wrong stuff in, or twice the amount that should be going in, it screws everything else up. And the amount of times we see this, and we have a tech team here that spends so much time having to unpick things where data's been going in wrong. The wrong stuff's been going into the machine for weeks, months, sometimes years at a time, and it just takes so much effort to unravel that. So take the time to get the tech set up right. Make sure you're not double tracking. Make sure you're not feeding the algorithms the wrong types of conversions. And as I say, beyond that, beyond getting your ducks in a row, beyond making sure you have consistency, and beyond what's already happening outside of your control, such as GA4 and stuff like that, the other simplest ways I can describe this that we do is make sure that you have a spreadsheet, make sure you track all of the different data sources. It sounds really simple, but it's really effective. So what we do is we create a dashboard for all of our clients, and we make sure that they feed in, we feed in Google Analytics is telling us revenue was X, and then Google Ads, that was telling us our revenue was Y, and then Meta Ads, that was also telling us that our data was, Z. From there, what we also have our clients do is they then feed in, or we go and do it for them, their Shopify actuals, or their WooCommerce actuals, or their Magento actuals, because then you get the full understanding. Because if all of these systems none of them are going to ever be 100% accurate when it comes to revenue, because they're all going to, Google and Meta all like to take the credit for those sales. So they're never going to be 100%. So the most accurate data you're always going to have as a brand is going to be the money that's in the till, i.e. in your Shopify account, in your Magento account. So having that, and then working out the difference between what that said versus what the different channels said as a total, that is going to always serve. And so if you track everything, and that's what we do, you can then work towards saying, which one of these platforms is the furthest out? Why? And it starts to become these kind of things of, okay, maybe because we're tracking the wrong stuff, or we're feeding or the attribution window is too wide, or whatever. So you can start to feed in. But if you have all these touch points in a spreadsheet, it's really easy. You just have, multiple lines, and then track week to week, month on month. Again, I love to keep things simple, but that's how we're doing it for all of our clients, alongside doing all the tech stuff to make sure it's all set up. Because ultimately, nothing is going to be more accurate than the money that's in the till. It doesn't matter, any marketer, any marketing manager, if you're having the conversation saying, but, analytics said this, Google Ads said that, what were the actuals, in terms of the money that landed in our account? That is what matters most. The rest of it, we just need to correlate it and get it as close to that as we possibly can. So if you are struggling with attribution, if you are you sort of thinking, this is off and this is over reporting and that's under reporting, don't take any one of those sources as gospel. Align them all up. Look at them all in sync with the actuals. Cover those basics in terms of making sure you're not making any of those common mistakes. And leverage GA4, because that is going to get better with first party data and all of the good stuff that's going to enable brands to do. It's just going to get that much easier. And if you're still not sure beyond that, that's where you bring an agency in to support you and to give you that clarity and enable you to see the wood for the trees. All right, hope it's useful. Just know that if you are struggling with accurate attribution, you are not alone. Most brands are struggling with it, and you've just got to get it so that it's as accurate as you possibly can, and then push on, and then ultimately just grow the brand, knowing that the attribution is never going to be 100%. You can get it close, but it's never going to be absolutely on the money. Hope it's useful. We'll see you on the next one. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe. See you soon.